Hi, it's Mary Greendale again for Just Thinking. Today we're actually even talking across country. So we're going to be talking about a special organization in East Africa, in Uganda in particular. And we're going to be talking to the founder and to her mother. Now, the mother may be especially familiar to you if you've gone to school in Holliston, Mary Beth Numbers, and her daughter Christa, whose last name is now Preston, right? Okay, so we'll be talking to them. The program is called Embrace Culture, and I actually remember when it started, and I remember that Christa was on the forefront of that as the founder. And the need for the program was because of the way that handicapped or special needs children are mistreated or treated, if you want to look at it that way, in Africa. You and I both know that there are plenty of people in this country who suffer from certain stigma. But when you hear the stories about these folks, these kids, you'll come to appreciate what it really, really means to be unlike everyone else in a culture that just doesn't have any room for you in their hearts or anywhere else. So Mary Beth Numbers and Christa Preston, thank you very much for agreeing to join me today. I know that Ann Buckley, I want to do a shout out to Ann because it was Ann that kind of put us all together. Ann's been a great champion of your program, but also just a champion extraordinaire for the Holliston schools, for a whole lot of students and a whole lot of teachers within them. So I just wanted to give her a shout out because she's been such a great lady. Anyway, so let's talk about what is Embrace Culture exactly. You've got a great logo. I love it. So which one of you want to kick us off with that?
I will kick off to that and thank you for the shout out on the logo. That was actually designed by another Hollistonian, Abby.
Who was it?
Yeah, we're keeping it all in town here. Holliston is really the reason this is all going. So Embrace Culture, it really started, actually the concept of it started way back in 2013. As many who do know Mary Beth know that she is a special ed teacher and that we have disabilities in our family. And I decided to go to Africa to do volunteering as a special ed teacher in an elementary school. The way they did it in Africa was they have general schools and then they have special needs schools. So they're
totally
segregated at this point. So I went to one of the special ed schools and I started working as a teacher there. I did that for about a year and it was very enlightening just to be a teacher there. I worked with what we classify as moderately to severely cognitively disabled children. I would say in the US, you typically have a 1-to-1 ratio with students like this, either a teacher to a student or an aide to a student. Mm-hmm. The classroom I was leading was 34-to-1. Mm-hmm. So we kind of played the game of just survive the day. And after a truly outstanding year there, I had grown pretty close with some of the students, and I wanted to see what their life was like outside of the school setting. So I started to adventure into the villages, and that's when this had to become more than just a volunteer experience. When I went out into the villages, I found out that these segregated schools were actually safe havens, because in the village, many of these children were considered to either be cursed or to honestly be possessed by evil spirits. And they are unfortunately hidden away. Many are locked up or they're targeted for abuse. And life outside of school is short and hard. So I got together with a group of Ugandans and we talked about this issue and what could be done, and that was the birth of Embrace Culture. So it started with working with schools and then helping students transition into the community after school.
How did the communities react when you stepped into their world? How were the people? Did they push back?
You know what? That was probably the most amazing part of it all. I expected a lot of pushback. I always think of this one story of this girl, Ketty, who has Down syndrome, and she was actually chased out of her village because they thought she was a curse and that she was causing a drought. So when her mother came to embrace culture, I remember I sat across from her and I told her, your daughter has this condition, it's called Down syndrome, and she started to cry. And I had expected that. And I was like, this is a very hard thing for any parent to hear. And then she started to laugh. And I was like, this is not an expected reaction anymore. And then her first, when she finally could speak, the first thing she asked me was, does this mean she can go to school? So you have to really imagine that you truly do believe that this person has an evil spirit in them or really is a curse. And now someone is telling you, no, this is a disability. This is a medical related condition. This is something we have all over the world. And what a moment of relief and joy that is. So when we're in the community, it truly does not take much for us to get those initial seeds of acceptance.
Yeah, sometimes the diagnosis is a big relief for any of us and all of us when we find out that something that we've wondered about. Yeah, but okay, so what is the whole goal of the organization? What's its intent, its purpose?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we started this organization out in Uganda. I'm very happy to say now it is a completely Ugandan-led organization. I am no longer over there in Africa. I'm here in the US. So the group working in Uganda is really focused on two things, education and we call it outreach, but that's working with the community to become more accepting, and then working with students, mostly with children starting at the age of 8 all the way through adulthood, on things like daily life skills and ways that when they do reintegrate into the community, they can really become as independent as possible. However, Embrace Culture, the actual organization here in the US, is now completely focused on building the capacity of organizations in Africa. So we do fundraising here and provide grants to different programs in Africa supporting this population. And we do training of those organizations so that they can grow and become income generating and just solid programs in themselves.
So so now are you in other countries? Does that mean somebody's starting something in another one of the countries in East Africa?
Yes, we have done some work in Tanzania, and we're building up some projects in Rwanda and Burundi. Our focus is definitely still on Uganda. But what's great to see is how many different organizations in East Africa are growing and building and taking on similar causes themselves. It just seems like we've kind of hit that wonderful tipping point in developing countries when they're ready to say, you know what, this is a population that we need to do more for.
Good, perfect. So what's a typical kid? Maybe there's not a typical kid, but what kind of children do you encounter in this?
Yeah, we typically work with autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy. Those tend to be, when we go to a village and we talk about disability, what tends to happen is children are brought forward. So children that were hidden while we're talking are brought forward. Parents run back to their home, they bring these children out. The characteristics that are a little bit easier to identify and describe are more common in autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy. However, diagnosis is not like it is here in the US. There's no formalized diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever disability a child may have, we don't always know, but we do really focus in on what we in the US call cognitive or developmental disabilities.
Do they ever bring forward children that are physically handicapped that you then have to redirect?
Yes, they definitely do that. We actually see a lot of a condition called club foot, which is where the foot is kind of turned this way. What's interesting about physical disabilities like that is a surgery can completely take that away.
Right.
So we do funding for some of those surgeries, and we have several partnerships in country. So if we can't serve a child that's brought forward, one of our partners can.
Huh. Yeah, actually, just to digress, I had one of my sons was born with both his feet like that. And what they did was they just put him in special shoes and a bar across his feet to force them out. So from the time he was an infant until he was 18 months old, he was in that thing. But it worked. I mean, he's perfectly fine. So if you can catch them as infants, it's ideal, you know, but pretty scary at the moment, I'm sure, for all of them, I understand. So this is a lot of really hard work and really good work. But why are you focusing on Africa and not places in the United States? It's not like we don't have needs.
Yeah, I I can tell you why I went out to Africa, but I think Mary Beth's answer is really interesting here, because she's been a big part of kind of like why Holliston and Africa.
Holliston and Africa is an interesting combination there. Okay, so Mary Beth, explain to me, why is it?
So you know, Mary, that I'm a second grade teacher here in Holliston, and I have the honor of influencing a lot of young people's lives at the age of 7 and 8 when they're just so ripe and they're like sponges. And I remember being that age too when I was 8 years old, and that one of the biggest influencers was the literature you read. And I remember reading literature at that time about kings and princesses and thinking, gee, I wish someday I'll grow up and I'll be a king and a princess, right? And we laugh and we think, well, that's unattainable. But actually, when you spend your first week in Uganda, or any of the 45 countries that are identified by the World Health Organization as least developed countries, like Haiti and Nepal or any of the African countries, you come home. And for sure, you know, you are American royalty, because what you've seen, what you've come home from, is you've seen Ugandan families living in huts. You know, I used to see those little African huts with the straw roofs, and I used to think, well, that was 75 years ago. No, that's Africa now. That's Uganda now. And people collect water off of their roofs so it will be clean, and they wonder if they have enough food to eat at the end of the day. And when you leave there, and this is very typical, we've had so many volunteers from Holliston go over there, it will take you a week when you come back, because you will go through this guilty feeling of having American privilege, because you absolutely know that when you compare our homes to their huts, you live in a castle and we live in a castle, you know? And so a couple of years after I started going to Uganda, I had the privilege as a second grade teacher to be able to talk to the second graders at our Thanksgiving feast and say, how do you know you're rich? And so I came across some world literature that said, this is the way you know you're rich. If you're sick and you can go to a doctor, if you can control the temperature of your room, if you can choose what you want to eat in a day, if you can go to school until you're legal age, and if you have access to electricity. I mean, that's really what makes us in the top, you know, third of the countries. Ugandan families can't be assured of this. Some of them have it in the cities, but a great number of them don't have those basic things that we take for granted. So that said, I think what Christa experienced when she went to Uganda is here she was growing up in Holliston with an uncle who lived in this same house with special needs, very significant special needs. He had oxygen 24/7. And you know, the interesting thing was he lived to be 59 years old and he got supportive services his entire life, because that's what happens when you live in the United States. But in Uganda, and this is, you know, very hard for us to publicly say, but in Uganda, the families of these special needs individuals often perform mercy killings because they just don't have the funds to be able to raise these children with the same kind of hopes that American families can raise their children. And so in order to be able to provide that for their family in other ways, they find that their villages ostracize them and shame them and They have to leave their villages and they have to find some other ways to provide for the child. I mean, we have the same kind of thing happening in Uganda that years ago happened in the United States. When my brother Nick was born, everybody was told to be institutionalized, and families who worked against that, you know, and those were our great parents, right? Families who worked against that were really going out on a limb to do something new. And this is the same thing with the Ugandan families now. They're going out on a limb to love their child. And there are times that this really stretches them, because sometimes, you know, just being able to provide for their medical costs is a lot. Or sometimes just being able to have the right information to educate their community so that their community knows what is child accepted. That's a lot. So the other connection from Holliston to Uganda is just this town itself. This town has been so amazing. So Christa just happened to come from this town, and she said earlier that the signage behind us is from her very best friend, Meg Abbey. There are people who, when Christa came up with this idea that we should try to make a difference, there are people who responded, and they came from this town. Debbie Gleason and Laura Matz were two that stepped up right away. They were both trainers for the Perkins School of the Blind. They did international training. So for this venture, it was something that was right up their avenue. They knew what to do. So they came on our board first. And then you talked about Ann Buckley, and you talked about what a powerhouse she is, a publicity powerhouse, a PTA powerhouse. And her husband, Matt Buckley, happened to spend about 5 years as a youth in Kenya, which is the neighbor of Uganda. And when he heard this opportunity to reconnect with that area of the world and having his Holliston roots, he said, oh, this is a really nice match for me. And yes, I would like to do it. So they're both on our board. And then 6th grade teacher, Ashley Lagasse, who's a well-known and well-loved Holliston teacher, she went over to Uganda just to do, you know, like 10 days of service. And while she was there, she stopped at the Amani Center, which is our school that's in Uganda. And when she stopped, she became impacted by the experience. And she came back and said, I also want to be a part of this organization. So our organization has grown with some really quality people, but it also has to do with the people who have supported it financially. And those people who reached out right away, the first one was the Holliston Lions Club, who gave us some publicity when it was very early in the process and we really needed it. And then the Holliston Business Association and all the Holliston businesses, we've gone to them for contributions. They've been amazing. I had a connection with an initiative that started years ago. It was mission groups here in Holliston. And anyone who has a little history in Holliston will know that we went to Hurricane Katrina in Mississippi and did Hurricane Katrina relief. We went to Vermont when there was water issues in Vermont. We went to New Jersey. We went to Jamaica, and we took Holliston High School youth, and we did this relief work. And so those connections ended up being helpful when Embrace Culture started. It was these same families who came back to support this initiative. So within the past 5 years, we would have no Embrace Culture if it wasn't these wonderful people who have been there and supported the initiative from its inception. So now we're 5 years down the road, and now we're looking at just the power of being able to continue the great strides that have already been made.
So before I probe it about East Africa itself and so forth, I just wanted to ask you one quick question. So in the growth of the organization, what's next? What's sort of, do you intend to grow and try to have chapters? I don't know if that would be the right word, but something else stateside?
Yeah.
Europe? Where? What? What's the organization's plan?
What's been really amazing, again, to kind of echo this Holliston sentiment. Holliston's a small town, and we've come together over different causes before. It's one thing I've always loved about Holliston. I always think about like the trees when they go on for sale and everybody gets their tree there. I don't know in anything that I've seen us unite on before it's had such a big impact. So Embrace Culture has had historically one main fundraiser, and that is mostly coming from folks in Holliston. That one fundraiser actually provides the funds that have gotten the programs in Uganda through entire years. So, $20,000 that we raised from Holliston can fund the organizations in Uganda for a full year, which is pretty outstanding. As that has grown, we've actually built on that success to spread both throughout East Africa and our donor base. This year, we actually got pretty significant international donors. We had a lot of folks from Canada. We had a lot of folks from Ireland giving, because also this year we started to get some international press addressing the human rights atrocities that are happening over there. The dream of the organization is for a world with no more hidden children. There's about 1 million hidden children in Uganda alone. Embrace Culture there has done incredible work, has found thousands and thousands, has educated over 1 million people. We do want that to grow. So we're hoping in this strange new world that has forced us to go more virtual, that's actually going to help us spread beyond just Holliston to continue to grow this organization towards that mission.
That's a really good point. And in fact, mentioning that, just how has COVID interrupted or enhanced or contributed toward the last year's activities?
Yeah, so COVID is challenging everywhere in the world. It was particularly challenging for the children that we work with in Uganda. Uganda, like many countries, went into a shelter in place. They stopped their public transportation, which meant many of the children we serve who need daily medical need, like rehabilitative therapy or epilepsy medication, or are just more susceptible to things like the cold and flu, and that puts them in the hospital. Their parents were suddenly faced with a situation where they would need to carry that child 4 miles just to get these basic health needs. The Embrace Culture team was outstanding, and they were able to jump right into action. Again, because of the funding that we got from our big Massachusetts event last year, we didn't have to worry about funding. So COVID didn't impact the programs in terms of the amount of money that they were going to get. We were still fully staffed. So what it let them do was transition what they typically do. So the school that we support became a safe house. So for any child where going home was a more dangerous situation, they were able to move into the center. And then our outreach team actually pulled together a mobile van. So they got a fleet of vans in, and they decked them out with all kinds of medical supplies. And they would use simple phones for a family to alert, I need medical assistance, and they would drive that medical assistance out to that family. Because they had the van there, which was, all decaled out, it got attention from other people in the village. And so they would give treatment to a family and then be giving a speech sensitizing the rest of the community. So it was just, and this, was all driven by the team there. So it was just amazing to see what they can do and also how brave they were in doing that. I mean, COVID was in Uganda. They were putting themselves at risk like any of the frontline workers in America. Sure. So that was just like amazing to see and to get to be a part of and to get to support. The organization, Embrace Culture, which provides the funding, again, we were set up from the year before, so we didn't have any significant negative impact. We were able to provide actually even more funding than we anticipated for some emergency support, like to an orphanage that we support. So yeah, it's definitely tough. But ingenuity has come out of it.
Resilience.
Resilience.
That's another piece that I'm hearing, is that if this didn't work, well, we'll do that. And if that doesn't work, I'm sure you'd find something else. So if it weren't for the support of this kind of organization, then what's the situation left behind? What is it, the basic situation without you guys?
I think if anybody had the opportunity to read the Al Jazeera article, so we just were honored by, there's a wonderfully acclaimed international publicist, Al Jazeera, and they published an article about the conditions in Uganda. It's very raw and real, and they recognize that embrace culture is one of the only, saving graces that are available to families there. And so we would just want this work to be able to continue, just so that there is a bright sunshine and a rainbow. Rainbow is a special word for Christa and I, so I had to just stop there for a minute. There's a rainbow to the storms that these families have to go through there. They need to see that there is a different way to do things. And they see that through the example set by the staff. I am so proud of the staff of Embrace Culture in Uganda. They have the passion. They're like the people in the United States who truly made changes. They're ready to make those changes. And so we just need to support them so that they can do the mission that they so desire to do.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce us to a story? Why don't you tell me about somebody that you're particularly happy with the result, or maybe felt most challenged by, or something, whatever.
Yeah, I'll use this to talk about Ketty, who's not just my personal, I love her story, but really the team in Uganda have just been so impassioned by her story. So Ketty, like I mentioned, is the girl that has Down syndrome. And when her village went through a drought, they blamed her, and under the cover of night, her mom ran out. We would come to find out in our work with Ketty and her village that this is the part that Mary Beth and I don't like to talk about because it's very hard to talk about. Her village practices something called mercy killings, which is when you have a child with Down syndrome, you either intentionally deny food or deny medication because you don't think it's a life worth living. There's even a ceremony in her village where parents get rid of their children that have disabilities. Ketty's father attempted to do that to her when she was young. Her mom was incredibly brave and refused to have that happen and hid Ketty at that point. When she fled with Ketty and was brought to us, we got to educate her about what Down syndrome was. We actually enrolled Ketty into the school that we support out there. That school does offer boarding, so Ketty did live at that school for a full year because we didn't feel like it was safe for her to return. She has learned she's learned so much. It's outstanding. It's absolutely outstanding. She's really taken to farming. The farm is hers. The farm is her baby, and if you walk onto that compound, she's going to show you her farm. She's a personality through and through. She's loves music, loves laughing, has a particular interest in modeling as well. So it was just wonderful. I got to live at that school while she was there and just see her grow into this woman, both figuratively and literally. She grew 1.5 feet in this time because she truly went from a world of being hidden and kept down, and now she was allowed to be herself and flourish. Stephen, who leads our outreach team, kept going back to her village. We took her back ourselves 3 times, where we would sit with the village and her and explain the condition. In each of these, we call them village meetings. In each of these village meetings, anywhere from 5 to 12 other children were brought to the meeting that had been previously hidden. we were able to reintegrate officially Ketty back into her home. So she's able to go home now. She's actually celebrated when she comes back to her village. They throw a big party when she comes home now. A lot of the children, it's amazing. The first time I went back with her, we didn't see any children with disabilities in her village. You just didn't see them. And now when you go back, they're there with every other child and they're playing around, and it's just such a wonderful, welcoming place. So that's just the impact that this one girl has had on us, on our team, but also on her own community in making that more accepting has just been amazing.
And there's nothing else like this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
I will add one thing about Ketty. I never had the pleasure of meeting Ketty directly, but I understand why she's become their poster girl. Because whenever you see any video of Ketty that lasts more than 5 minutes, she's going to dance somewhere in it. I think the girl literally goes around dancing where she goes.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, I forgot what I was going to ask you. So just tell me, the name of the center is what? Amani? No, it can't be Amani. Am I saying it right?
Amani, yep. So
Amani.
The main center that we kind of call our hub of support is the Amani Center. That stands for power in Uganda. So it's an empowerment center. It does everything from what we call functional academics. So what do you need for everyday life? What do you absolutely need to know? That's things like counting money, reading the stop sign, reading basic traffic signs. So we focus on that, but then we also build in vocation training. So they'll learn how to do farming, beadwork, bakery is a big class there. These are all aligned to the national curriculum of Uganda. So these are all completely recognized programs. Our students who leave and reintegrate into the community can either support themselves or join family businesses. And then we kind of have a third section to the education there, and that is the empowerment section. So we will have classes on what is your right, how do you become a self-advocate, and then something I love, which is dance. So we have dance and art therapy, which, to be completely honest, when dance therapy was brought to Amani Center, it was actually brought by someone named Joseph, who's Ugandan, had polio and has a disability now because of his polio. And he found dance to be this incredible way that he could express himself, and he gained a lot of confidence through it. So when we started Amani, he was like, you guys need dance. And he came in and he started this dance program, and I was like, this is fun, but it's like physical education. I did not realize the emotional power that it would have. And for a lot of our girls, especially who have been targeted for abuse, when they could dance and they could control their bodies and they could express themselves. I mean, you walk into that class and there's tears. Like, there's tears because they're really getting out that pain.
They're free.
They're free.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's the extraordinary thing about dance, period. But I mean, it is I can imagine how that must have looked and felt. So you've already said that you were comfortable in terms of financially, but moving forward, you must have a financial plan. How are you going to move along with the need? And as I understand, you have a virtual cooking something coming up. I'm assuming this would have been a real in-person kind of show at some time, maybe, and people would be watching, but now it's going to be virtual because we all are. At any rate, so I'm assuming those two go together, that there's that this is a fundraiser that you're going to be doing for the organization.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the last 5 years, Embrace Culture really has been supported by one big annual event. That event has been held in person, mostly in Massachusetts. We call it the Experience Africa Benefit, because we really do try to, bring a taste of Africa with music, dance, food, whatever it may be. And that one event really has financially provided for us. Like I said, this year we were able to expand our financial base a little bit more internationally. But this one event really is our big moment. So we aim this year to raise about $20,000. We had a similar goal last year. We made about $25,000 last year, and that truly is enough to support programs in Uganda for a significant period of time. So we have that virtual this year, which is going to be an interesting experience. We have an amazing chef. Her name is Chef Sylvia. She's from Garden in the Kitchen, and she's going to be leading a live cooking show. Kind of think like Emerald Agassi and how he would walk you through on TV. Similar to that, we'll of course incorporate stories from Uganda and directly from the children that are being impacted and the staff out there, so people can come to know them, while at the same time you're cooking dinner, you're making a drink, and you have a chance to give. And we're hoping our year over year Massachusetts base comes to that and expands the invitation even further to family and friends they might have in other states who are going to be able to join this year.
Well, that is one of the best things about virtual interaction is frankly, I know that even in town government, we've had some great meetings that have been much, much larger and had local participation in a way that we never get if you're talking about a meeting room. So you might just luck out this time. This might work to your advantage completely. Yes, absolutely. Now, in terms of the show itself, will we be cooking African, or are we just cooking? Are we cooking African recipes or what?
I'll let Mary Beth take that one. I know she tried out the recipe already.
So I
Really?
First of all, Sylvia Ribas, who is the chef, she is helping us to make a fish stew. And the fish stew has African origins, and it can be made in 20 minutes. So the good news is you'll start it at the beginning of the show, and by the time our show is over, you'll be ready to sit down and have your delicious dinner. So, and I can tell you that my husband has already tried to make the meal, and he is not the chef of the family, and he did it wonderfully. So it is an easy recipe to follow along with. It makes your whole house smell spectacular. And if you're just a two-family household, you'll probably have enough for 2 meals. So it's going to feed about 5 or 6 people. So
that sounds great. That sounds really, really great. So just in conclusion here, I know we're pushing the virtual show. Now, when was it? It was December 3rd.
December 3rd from 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay, we'll make sure that we put a banner on the screen to make sure that that's there when we do this to HCAT. But at any rate, so all you have to do is, how are you going to get the link? People.
Yep, so you can go to embraceculture.org. As you can see behind Mary Beth, Embrace Culture is spelled with a K. So it's EMBRACEKULTURE, all one word, .org/event. You can also just go to embraceculture.org and it will direct you to the event page.
Okay, so and the logo will be printed there for to connect to the live show. Correct. And how far in advance will the logo be there? I mean, it's like you putting it up in the half hour, an hour, 2 hours
it's up
before.
Already. Yep.
It's
People
up there already.
Are already able to go up, learn more about the event, get tickets.
Okay.
And then of course, we'll send, just before the event, we'll send access to the live show.
Okay, so that's the key piece. You need to go in and do this piece on the website ahead of time to have a ticket to be able to get the live link. That's okay, just so that everybody understands that. That's one of the tricks about all of this virtual stuff. It's not like you can just pick up the phone and dial, but at any rate. Okay, so the event itself is on December 3rd, and it was at what time?
7 to 8 p.m., just 1 hour.
Okay, and that is in Eastern Standard Time, right? Not your California time.
Eastern Time.
Okay, Eastern Time. It's Holliston time, and so folks need to be sure to go to the website and check out the event and then sign up for tickets. Okay. What are your parting comments, Mary Beth? What do you want to make sure that we've either said or want to repeat?
Well, I think based on the fact that it's the Thanksgiving month, I know that right now I'm at that time of my life where I'm downsizing, and it's amazing to me how many things are going out of my house, things that the media told me I had to have in my house that I no longer want. They're going out. I think the media is really good at telling us we need a lot of things, but really if we could take that Thanksgiving money and remember that it is truly in giving that you receive, that there are some things you could have in your house, like for instance, Halloween candy. Okay, so everybody is convinced we have to have Halloween candy. We sell 600 million pounds of Halloween candy. That's 6 times the size of the Titanic. For what reason? I'm a second grade teacher. All these kids are in my class and they're going, how are we going to get rid of this? The parents are saying, how are we going to get rid of this Halloween candy? And they're going, send it to the dentist, send it. Our media has taught us to be such a world of abundance that it's really not necessary. So if you really want to make an impact for Thanksgiving, pick something that you can truly give to, and it makes a difference. And this is definitely one of those things. If you give to this, you will save lives, period. There are no costs to embrace culture. Everybody's a volunteer. And so your money is going directly to the programs and the people whose lives it will truly change. And so I just want to say that, I'm so fortunate to know what a beautiful country Uganda is. They have so many wonderful resources. There are African safaris, there are Jane Goodall's gorillas. And all we're trying to achieve is that the individuals in that country have that same kind of protected, secure life, that we would want any person in our country to also be able to enjoy. So take your Thanksgiving money and do something you're truly going to be thankful for.
Sounds great. And how about you, Christa?
You know what? Mine is just absolute gratitude. Absolute gratitude towards Holliston. A huge thank you to everyone in this town for coming together to support this cause. If I am to ask one thing, echoing Mary Beth's, when you give, you receive. But one way of giving is also just inviting. So help extend this good feeling out beyond just our small town so we can make it a really global cause.
Sounds wonderful. Congratulations to both of you, and to the many, many people that have obviously joined in and helped you in one way or another to get to this point in time. I hope all of that continues and that you flourish and grow in many multitudes. Thank you very much for coming back and talking to us. And we're here anytime you need, just holler. And I do wish you all the best of luck. Mary,
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
You're a great listener.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. All right, folks. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a trip to Uganda. I never thought I wanted to see Africa, but this sounds so fascinating to me. But at any rate, okay, folks, I don't think I'll be doing much travel until the COVID, whatever it is, goes away. I hope you do take advantage of this opportunity to do something that does get you a little bit outside your own comfort zone, because no matter really how miserable this has been in Holliston, let's face it, it hasn't been all that miserable for most of us. We are, and we should be very grateful, and it's a good opportunity. So remember, the event is December 3rd. Remember that the organization is Embrace Culture with a K. And remember to do your part. Please go to that organization, buy tickets, sign up, look at the stories, learn a little bit more, send the link to this show to your friends, let them know about it. Let's spread the word. Let's see if next time I talk to Christa and to Mary Beth, we can find out that we were in all kinds of communities all over the place. All right. So for that, thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll be back next time. In the meantime, just thinking.